Hello there. We're in London today. We're in Alexandra Palace at the north of the city. Looking down on the horizon, there is the city below us. And it's a building built in the mid-1870s as a sort of recreation and entertainment venue, exhibitions, performances, music. You get the kind of idea. Art and fun. Still to this day used as a kind of venue. So it's had a sort of long history serving the people of North London. It's an interesting-ish building. When it was built by a sort of private companies. It isn't necessarily the most wonderfully finished building. I'm not massively fond of it. That sounds mean, doesn't it? The kind of exposure of the brick I always find a little bit tough. It's not like a museum of the normal Victorian style. It doesn't have the grandeur of, say, the Natural History Museum or the V&A. But it's still, a worthy thing. I'm sure if I lived in the area, I'd be super happy with it. Spent the day there with the London Plein Painters Society. So they arrange these meetups where you go and paint together. Well, not so much together, but you meet together, you then paint on your own, and then you meet up at the end of the session to kind of have a social. You'll see actually further painters kind of in the further down the walkway here, having their own fun day. Most people chose to face the city, face the view, because it's kind of rare in London to get a big view like this. There's not many hills. But for me, of course, as a sort of urban sketcher, it's always the urban environment I'm looking for. It's always ultimately the buildings. I found this particular spot, which looked up at the main sort of grand facade with the arch, lamppost, and the aerial on the far end. Now I'm going in with a game plan. Green A2 sort of thick paper, almost thin card, and gouache, Himi gouache. Here's an image here of the kind of set I use because I get asked questions about it, a kind of crafter's set. And after applying some of the paint on with a brush, I'm just going to use a kitchen scourer. Now, you'll note that there's no pencil drawing here, there's no construction. I'm literally using the blocking in of this white tone as a way of establishing where the drawing is going to sit on the page. So because it's using the sponge, I can be very loose, obviously loose. This is part of the technique of sort of de-stressing yourself. This is quite a complicated view. It would be possible to get very sort of internally tight about it. I'm quite nervous about it because there's a lot of detail. And so by starting in this very, I guess, painterly way, by just blocking in these masses of tone, especially using the dark colour of the paper, it just starts the drawing in such a relaxed way that it takes a lot of the pressure off. And if you're careful with it, you can maintain this very relaxed approach to what you're going to be ultimately drawing, or at least in my mind drawing, although a lot of the drawing's done with a brush. That sense of looking for something which is detailed enough to imply the building, but never so detailed that it becomes kind of slavish to it, that it becomes uncomfortably precious and you feel uncomfortable in generating it. It just feels strange and tight sometimes if you're doing a drawing that has the potential to be so extremely detailed that you feel cornered really by it, and you just basically end up choosing another thing to draw because it just seems too much. So it's quite nice to be able to have this technique in your bag, as it were, in your ability set, so that you can really take on anything, because if you accept you're going to be doing it in this very loose, brushy kind of way, then you can accept, you've got to trust the process. You've got to trust that it's going to get, there will be a whole period. This is a good hour into the creation of this piece. It still looks awful. And that's me saying that. It kind of has a childish daub quality, kind of blocky, messy, and ill-defined. And you have to trust yourself that by continuously adding to this color base, these layers, you're going to gradually create refinement within this sort of blocky mess. But the blockiness allows you, as I say, to completely relax. You'll notice the way I'm using the brush in a very relaxed way, in a very kind of patty way, a very kind of just touching here, touching there, not trying to be particularly clean with the application of the paint, because the sort of blurriness is actually part of the charm of the finished piece. Now you'll notice I'm using a very sort of clearly defined sense of atmospheric regression. So let's explain that. The distance is blue, and it'll end up being more unfocused. That sense of it disappearing into sort of like a mist. If you look on the horizon, in fact, if you look even on this video when you're looking towards the horizon, it is desaturated. It's basically blue in tone from the atmosphere, the colours of the sky. So it loses those kind of warm tones. So atmospheric regression also, therefore, allows you to say the foreground will be warm. And in this case, I'm going in with reds and oranges. So actively, in order to create this sense of depth. So close to me, warm colours. The further away I go, the cooler the colours go. And that will, at this stage, be super obvious. But the more I add to the painting, I hope that to be subconscious. So if you look at the painting in its finished state, once you know it's there, it's very obvious. But if you don't know it's there, it's not obvious. You just get that sense of depth, the sense of not just perspective creating depth, but actually the colour itself creating depth. It's a really interesting technique. It's really worth remembering as a kind of simple little way of getting a bit of colour activity and colour drama, to allow colour to do work for you, not just colour to represent the colour of the actual building you're painting or drawing, but actually doing something more creative than just representation. Now that includes things like this lamppost, which I'm currently drawing. Now this lamppost is bright blue, kind of a sky blue actually, and I'm drawing it first in red as a way of reminding myself it is in the extreme foreground. It's actually the closest thing to me. So although I will go into that lamppost and represent this light blue colour, I'm starting with it having this red tint, because this red outline, because I want it to pull forward. I don't want that blue to push it backwards into the facade. I wanted it to be in front of the facade. And again, that's part of the layering process. If I just stopped here, it would look wrong. But because I'm going to add multiple layers of colour on top of it in a kind of a quick shorthand kind of way, it will build up and become visually closer to reality. Remember that the point for me is always that if somebody were to look at this piece at the end, they would say, oh yeah, definitely Alexandra Palace. It looks like the thing as you remember it, in your kind of memory in your heart. It doesn't necessarily look like the photograph. In fact, there's loads of errors, which even as I was creating this piece, I was thinking, yeah, I can't be bothered. There's kind of details and decorative elements that I just wasn't bothered by. I didn't want to add them in. It would seem too precious to just start fiddling, putting extra details in. I also want to move quite fast. You'll notice that my hand is confident with its motions. It's saying I need a line here, a line here. I'm not hesitating. I'm being very direct, because that's part of the effect I want in the finished piece. I want it to feel confident rather than hesitant. So that's sort of an active decision. For me, it's easier to express confidence through speed. You'll also notice I'm going through two different kinds of paint. I've used the Himi gouache being a kind of opaque watercolour. So it's watercolour style pigment, but in a solid colour base. It dries very fast. It's very kind of like acrylic paint, even faster drying than acrylic paint. But it accepts oil paint on top of it really happily. So you can use it in this way to create the underpainting, a lot of which will still poke through, but the majority of which will be covered by oil paint, which doesn't have to be so precise because you've got the underpainting beneath it to kind of balance that. So the two together, especially on a lovely bright day like this, when you've got that underdrawing, you've got the rough blocking in with the sponge, you've then got slight layer of precision with the gouache, then you've got another layer of precision with the oil painting. The whole thing builds into something visually kind of complex to the eye in a way that feels positive, creatively positive. It doesn't feel like I've just drawn it and coloured it in. There's something else going on. The eye is kind of tricked into seeing quality. Another thing I think it's really worth pointing out here, and you've been very aware of it the whole way through, You see a lot of people doing urban sketching in their studios with perfect lighting, and with an aerial, with the camera over the top, filming down, and it always looks perfect, of course, because they've got good lighting, and of course that's how it feels when you're in a studio. The reality of urban sketching is much more difficult. Yeah, you are really held by the sun. I mean, I wanted this view. I'm sitting on a small stool with my little A2 portfolio to lean on, and there is nothing I can do about the sun's position other than maybe rig up a huge umbrella. And I'm traveling relatively light. I'm not traveling with sunscreens to block out sun. So this view where you see literally my head shadowed on the paper, that's not just annoying in this video. It's annoying for me while I'm painting it. I'm literally aware of it. Often I'll be moving my head in order to create shadow where I want to paint, in order to kind of see better, because it's so intensely bright. I'm even wearing sunglasses today because that's how bright the sunlight is bouncing back off the paper. So the sort of uncomfortableness of that, it's real. I mean, that's what urban sketching is like, and that's part of it. It's like running on a running machine in a gym and running a marathon across some wild landscape full of rocks and grass and trees. They are both running and they feel very different because of the reality of the environment you're in. And so if you're that kind of person who wants to feel that kind of, the grit between your toes, as it were, that feel the honest reality of what it's like to draw and paint outside, then this kind of intensity of light is a very real part of it, and it's something to be kind of embraced. I mean, I want to show you this because this will be your reality. When you go out and pick up a pen, this is how it's going to feel. You won't find the perfect spot. You'll find something you do want to draw, but it will never be the right conditions. You won't be able to wait until the sun's moved somewhere else. You've got other things to do with your day. So the time you have is the time you have. You're going to sit and do the best you can. And I think it's important that people see that honesty. These are never ideal conditions, even on a sunny day. In fact, to be honest with you, a sunny day can be kind of one of the most annoying kinds of days because it's simply too bright. As I say, I'd rather have an overcast day. I can invent the shadows. I don't need to have the sun to show me where shadows will be. I can just make those up. Now, I thought it'd be a good moment to talk about gas. The fact I have gas. By gas, of course, I mean gear acquisition syndrome, which means buying too much stuff. Now, if you're a photographer, buying too much stuff means you buy too many lenses or even cameras. That sounds very expensive. When you're an urban sketcher, having gear acquisition syndrome means you buy too many pens, which are always relatively cheap things. So it's nothing to be afraid of. I'd say that compared to most hobbies, it's probably one of the cheapest things you can do. Well, I don't know, maybe playing chess is cheaper, but you know what I mean. As far as the creative pursuits, you can be a very happy urban sketcher with a handful of pens and some scrappy old paper. Take this sheet of paper here. I buy this from my local craft shop, and it's paper. It's paper, not anything special. It's the kind of paper you would use to draw anything on. It's not anything particular. Just because I'm using oil paints doesn't mean I'm using a canvas or some specially prepared board. I think it's useful to get into the idea that you can draw on just about anything. That's why I draw on the brown craft paper a lot. And it's very relaxing. Again, I'm kind of obsessed about this idea about being relaxed when you're drawing, because I think lots of people, in fact myself, I can get very uptight about drawing if I'm not careful. So having things like cheap paper and cheap pens and somewhere to sit and somewhere to draw, I think it's a path to some kind of relaxed inner calm happiness without being too weird about it. I think there's something about connecting to that creative part of yourself in a way that doesn't feel you're not exposing a lack of creativity. Let's put it like that. When you're drawing a thing in front of you, that's the decision. You're drawing the thing in front of you. The interpretation is where the creativity comes in. Whereas if you're sitting at home and you're thinking, let's invent a drawing, let's do something from my imagination, I think that's very exposing. That puts you in a position of, well, what is your creativity like at this exact moment? At this moment of time, I have to be able to perform. I'm going to draw something abstract and creative and dynamic. That's just wildly pressured. Do you not think? I think the thing that would put most people off urban sketching is the act of being outside, the act of being seen by others to be doing it. So you don't have the privacy of your own room and the ability to kind of, I don't know, hide away a thing that doesn't work. Whereas if you accept the fact it's probably not going to work on multiple levels anyway, and all you're doing is openly sharing that in a way that you're not embarrassed about. And of course you'll be embarrassed about it the first time, and the second time, and the third time. Increasingly you'll become less embarrassed to the point where you don't mind anymore. And even me, I've been sketching now for a long time, and there's still moments where I look at it and think, please no one look at this moment, please wait for another hour. So here's the finished piece, and I'm happy with it. I think it worked well. I mean, it was a long piece. I did go for 4 hours, which sounds obscene now, but it's an oil painting as much as it's a sketch. So it went deep, and there was a lot of overwork and going over and over again. So I have no shame in that. I'm okay with it. It's a painting, really, isn't it? It's not much of a sketch anymore, but it's nice to be able to sometimes break those boundaries and merge from one sort of artistic pursuit to another. Well, if you've been able to stick all the way through to the end, thank you so much. I appreciate this has been a marathon, and you had to watch a lot of dodgy footage with a lot of bright sunlight. So really hope that this has inspired you to get out there and make your own marks.